Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Kushner. I'm a practicing architect in New York, and I'm also the founder and CEO of Architizer.com, which is a platform for architects to show their work to the world. I was honored when the Municipal Art Society asked me to introduce two of the finest architects working in the city today, David Rockwell and Charles Renfro. Mass asked me to use a video to prelude a conversation that the two will have about why good design matters. But being an architect, I thoroughly redesigned the question, and I thought it'd be more interesting to talk about not why good design matters, but how good design happens. So we went ahead, Architizer visited the two offices, both of their studios, to sort of peek behind the curtain. And see how the process of making good buildings happens. And I'm going to show you those videos now in this world premiere. And the only hitch that we run into is that the content was so amazing and the work that they're doing is so spectacular that it wouldn't fit into one video. So we have two videos today to show each of you. So first, let me introduce David Rockwell, and then we'll take a look at the video. David Rockwell, and these are very abbreviated bios because we don't have that much time, is the founder and CEO of the Rockwell Group, which is a cross-disciplinary architecture and design practice based in New York City with another office in Madrid. The firm focuses on a diverse array of projects that range from hotels, hospitals, restaurants, airport terminals, Broadway sets, and consumer products. Projects include W Hotels in New York, Paris, and Vieques, the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco, the Kodak Theater in LA, where the Academy Awards happen, and David won an Emmy for the 82nd Annual Academy Awards. The Hotel Bel Air, the Mohegan Sun Casino, Broadway musical sets for Hairspray, Legally Blonde, and Catch Me If You Can, and the project that the video concentrates on, the Eleanor Bunin Monroe Film Center at Lincoln Center. In May 2010, David was inducted into the James Beard Foundation Who's Who of Food and Beverages in America. He won the Pratt Legends Award in 2009, the National Design Award by Smithsonian's Cooper Hewitt in 2008, and tons more information I could give you. But I'm going to let the video do the talking, so if we could play that now, please.
Like many architects or designers, what drives my studio is a kind of curiosity. What really interests me is design that starts with trying to figure out what the problem is and trying to have a dialogue and a conversation. It's not about deciding what the formal solution is before you know what the problem is. Most New Yorkers think of the Film Society as the film festival, when in fact 365 days a year, they're doing programming. They're the most prolific and the youngest of the constituents at Lincoln Center. There was a whole community about film lovers, people who wanted to talk about film, grabbing a bite to eat while having a conversation about film. So the process allowed us to define what we thought was the goal, which is a kind of living room conversation area around film. So all of that contributes to making good design. Part of it is learning all we could about film, all we could about sound absorption, looking at movie theaters around the world. When we realized it was a sectional challenge to get from 65th Street down and over, it opened up what I think became the kind of creative breakthrough of the project. And that was, there was a center space that was landlocked between the two entries to these two screening rooms, and we proposed that that be a kind of amphitheater that during the day could be an extension of the lobby, and at night that garage door could close and that could be a third screening room. I think in some ways New York Film Society is one of the best examples for me of a project that started out as an exciting challenge and ended up as a much richer project than I realized. We use whatever we can. We work in sketch models almost consistently. So there's not a project we do that doesn't have a sketch model. because clients, I think, can relate to the physicality of it. I think as architects, we love the notion of crafting permanent structures, but I think it's worth not overlooking ephemeral in places that create memories like theater. So there's a central investigation about architecture as a platform for people and a kind of performance. One of the things I look for in design is a kind of something that's resonant or familiar and surprising. I think New York is a place where good design matters, and I think it's a city that has always been about taking risks. From the air, the city looks like this very neat, organized Cartesian grid, but on the ground it's this incredibly messy, vital, ever-changing opportunity for good design and bad design.
These videos were as fun to make as they seem, by the way. Charles Renfro, our next speaker, is a partner at Diller Scofidio Renfro, an interdisciplinary design studio that integrates the performing arts, visual arts, and architecture. Amongst their numerous projects are the High Line, the McMurtry Art and Art History Building at Stanford, the Creative Arts Center at Brown University, and the redesign and expansion of Lincoln Center. The firm won the National Design Award in Architecture from the Cooper Hewitt in 2006, the AIA President's Award, the AIA Medal of Honor, the AIA Design Awards for numerous projects. The firm's work has been exhibited worldwide at many museums and institutions, locally at the MoMA and at the Whitney. Charles is the board president of Storefront for Art and Architecture and has been a faculty member at Columbia Graduate School for Architecture, Planning, and Preservation since 2000. If we could see Charles's video now.
When we started Lincoln Center, the redesign of Lincoln Center almost 10 years ago, it was a daunting project. Where to begin? You know, what can we touch of the master's work? I think we all felt that Lincoln Center has great DNA. How could we reinvent Lincoln Center without losing Lincoln Center? How can we make it more Lincoln Center than Lincoln Center? We have approaches to our projects which seek to identify the problems and possibilities in the projects. And if there aren't problems given to us by a client, we make the problems. We've definitely scared a couple of clients in meetings telling them we're about to give them problems. This is an approach that we take to all of our projects. We try to understand what is the real problem and how can we achieve it with a within fairly simple acts and means. So this is a finished model that we've done for Lincoln Center. This is 65th Street right here, including the extension of the Juilliard School, which is represented by this piece here, Alice Tully and its new lobby, a new restaurant pavilion with a grass slope called Lincoln Ristorante, and underneath the collaboration that we had with David Rockwell on the Film Center. We have a very young studio, which we love, not only because people are great looking when they're younger, but also because they have a lot of energy. It's not just the three partners or the principals in the firm, it's everyone who works here. We'll be here around the table tearing and gluing and spitting and taping and all of the things that we feel like we have to do to get ideas onto the table. We tossed off fairly quickly an idea about the veil for the competition, but we knew we had a great idea where there was thickness and light that gets modulated through almost a coral-like structure that is three-dimensionally represented on the facades and the roof. When you're driving by, you'll actually be able to see through the honeycomb into the gallery space. Both the walls and the ceiling are made of the same system. These are details that we're obsessed about. These are the details that make this project special and unique. And we haven't quite figured it out, and we're still working on it. Picking up on some of New York's great industrial past, this is a project on the west side of Manhattan, and using technology that is extant. In this case, we were thinking about gantry cranes. This is a very large shed structure that will move and unfold, pull itself out, and expand its footprint, more than triple its footprint size. New York City is an amazing place, a wonderful place to be practicing architecture. It's all about delivering new experiences to the people of New York. That's what good design is, bringing new experiences to people's lives on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you both. Now live and in person, we have Charles Renfro and David Rockwell with us. And we have a few minutes to talk about why good design matters, how good design happens. And I'll kick off just by asking you two, one thing that both of you touched on in the videos that we did is this idea of the problem and using the problem to generate good design as a starting point. And I was hoping you could speak a little bit about how that works in your studios.
Sure. Do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I realize I'm wearing the same shirt I wore in the video, but I did change in between.
That's a problem right there.
So I think good design happens when you don't mess with your wardrobe too much. One of the things watching both videos I was thinking about is part of good design is continuing to ask questions and having a point of view that comes from something you uncover from the client. Something about the program, something about the client, a kind of, I like to use theater as an analogy and as a laboratory in our work. And in theater, of course, there's a script or there's a backstory or there's a score. And in architecture, what we find is key is defining the problem, working with the client to figure out what the DNA of that problem is, and then staying flexible enough that throughout the project you can respond to all of the many things that happen that make architecture so challenging. And that central idea, in some ways, needs to be strong enough to survive budgets, realities, schedules, everything that comes up. And so it's a combination of listening and learning as you're developing the piece that's going to make the difference in the project, whether it's a section, plan, or material. And I think that is, for us, the biggest challenge, to consistently have a point of view where we're open to new information and don't freeze the design so soon that you miss all of those things that emerge as the project goes on.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think we have similar working methodologies. Neither of our offices use form as a starting point. We're not formalists. I've been known to call us programists, where we really dig deep down into the program. We understand things that are both told to us directly by a client, but things that aren't told to us. I mean, we operate like psychiatrists all the time, and sometimes in making problems, there are sometimes problems that are specific to a program, but there are sometimes problems that are latent in a site. What's a history of a place? What's a history of the program typology? And do you want to push that? Something they'd never, the client may never have thought of. And lastly, we have a continuing series of issues that we investigate as an office, as a studio, as a research studio, having to do with vision and sight and voyeurism and just issues of modern culture that we always bring to our projects. So they're they're layered, and they try to address everybody's issues, including our own.
Well, I know that the two of you are collaborating on a project now. You've collaborated in the past, and this idea of, you said, latent typological programs, I think. Other words to describe that in some of the projects that you use that my mom would understand. Like, how does that actually happen?
I've never met your mom.
She wouldn't understand that, but she's very, very bright, but you wouldn't understand that. How does that show up in architecture? And I think, especially the two of you with your eye on urbanism in the city, how does that show up in how architecture meets the city?
Charles, we never actually talked about this together, but the first time we worked together was on a project that didn't happen in Hong Kong. And it was a larger project. We were each working on a piece. And I, of course, was, you know, a huge fan of what Diller Scofidio Renfro did. And the most interesting thing for me was the first question was about program. And, you know, the latent program, in some cases, what you may be doing is something that appears to be a fixed structure. But what's more interesting is how that structure may change over time. Or you may be doing, you know, you look at the kind of incredible rebirth of Lincoln Center. And I think a lot of what's happened is about opening it up. So the kind of latent potential of that project was about knitting together the city. When we're working on a playground project that's taken 5 or 6 years, and it was fascinating to hear that every parent knows exactly what the playground their kid should play like. They don't care what other kids play on. So the amount of input that you get when you're sort of open, and then you need to be flexible enough to hear all that and come up with some typology.
Yeah. I just saw a couple of slides of the Highline flash by here again. And I think one of the latent possibilities that we tried to engage with the Highline is simply looking around very carefully at the city. And the Highline, in my opinion, is not a park, it's a viewing device. And it's a way to see New York City and to be in New York City in a different way than you've ever experienced before. So we looked at opportunities that are latent, and you would never necessarily think that they were there. They weren't programmatic, they weren't given to us. 10th Avenue Overlook, which slide just passed by, is one perfect example. You know, we turned that moment into a problem. We chose to expose the traffic. I mean, who wants to look at traffic? Right. But it turns out it's kind of fun and mesmerizing. But that wasn't a program that was given to us. That was looking carefully at our surrounding and trying to make something more of it.
Both of you speak along those same lines about the kind of using everyday things in the city and twisting them to create something different, something surprising, these juxtapositions. Witold was talking about lawn chairs in Times Square. And I wonder, you know, in your work, how does that play, and does architecture have this responsibility? Does good design entertain to a certain extent?
Well, I've got to admit, there was an image of the Academy Awards, and we did the building as architects, the Kodak Theater, 12 years ago or 13 years ago. And I observed that ceremony largely as an outsider, someone who was trying to give structure to it. And then a few years ago, I was asked to design the awards, and my response to the director was, doesn't everyone watch the Academy Awards to say how much they hate it? Isn't that the central reason you watch it? And he said, that's true, but there's an opportunity in that. And what I remembered was the years I went before to observe it as an architect, by far the most interesting things were commercial breaks, when you got to see who needed a job, who gets up and walks around, who stands still. And so it occurred to me, as the designer of the event, that it was about the audience. You know, if you could create an environment that translated the relationship of people, you're not turning on that show to really necessarily see anything other than a kind of interaction of this community. So that was a case where we took an everyday thing, which is the audience, and replaced interaction with a lot of stuff on stage.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you were asking a question about does architecture entertain? I mean, is it you know, is it about joy and experience? And I would say that's something that we both bring to the table. I think it's really important that architecture is not inert. It is something that one passes through over time. If one doesn't have, if one isn't challenged by their environment, and that could be challenged to have fun. You know, there are a lot of ways one can be challenged. If one isn't challenged by that, then it's in a way a failure, I think. You should always know that you're in the place is for you. It's for your experience. Even if it's being in the post office and waiting in line, if anybody does that anymore. But I mean, you know,
I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, and so design has to happen everywhere, and it doesn't have to be overdone. It just needs to be considered, thoughtful.
I think it's the thoughtfulness is what you guys engage with. It's not the easy answers. They don't become cliches quickly your designs because you don't rely on the sparkly or the easy answer, but by digging in deep and using the program to propel that, it stays fresh and it stays challenging. I wonder if anyone in the audience has any questions for us. Really?
Good morning. I have to say I'm a great admirer of both your works. I was wondering about the issue of equity in good design, perhaps. How do you think you can practice in a way that makes design like that accessible to people who maybe cannot afford your services?
Well, it's a great question, and I think it's something both of our studios talk about a lot. And you know, there's a bunch of ways I think as designers you can do that, and one of them is, in fact, one of the similarities between our studios is we're makers. If you go to Charles's studio, they're always making something. And I think that designers and architects can give back through the process of making and contributing. We did a playground in Lower Manhattan, and when it opened up, there was, first of all, a lot of misrepresentation about the cost because of infrastructure and this perception that it was a particularly expensive endeavor, when in fact, all of our services were pro bono, and there was a foundation raised to support it. But what we realized is you could take away a lot of the architecture and create a portable playground that, and now there's 400 of them around the world, mostly in disadvantaged communities. And I think, you know, giving back is, and we were in fact talking about it backstage, that, you know, is someone who lives in New York, you're constantly asked to contribute to various endeavors. But I think we inherently, as architects and designers, can improve things through what we do and not just organizations we support.
Yeah, I mean, where are you? Oh, there. Our practice is focused on the public realm, and I think that is inherently a way that we give our services to everyone. People of every, you know, anybody is free to go to the High Line or to go to Lincoln Center. And one of the things we did with Lincoln Center is make a lot of it accessible without a ticket. And if you need a ticket, sometimes we made it so you can at least look in and see. There's closed circuit things happening. So it's one of our missions, actually, to bring design to a large quantity of people.
I love that architecture in this city is a public commodity, really, by definition. And I wonder, actually, since you are makers, right, and you experiment and you push the envelope, and, you know, in a way the city is your petri dish, have you been surprised by some of the results once you unleash the creations? How they're used or underused, failures or successes in any of your work?
What mold starts to grow in
That's what I'm asking, exactly. Yeah. In those corners, the dust bunnies.
Yeah.
I'll let you take that one.
Oh, right. Well, look, we've been tickled by how positive people have been about the High Line, let's say, and you know, people like Amanda, and I mean, it's a big group of people that have come together to make these things happen, you know, I think that's an amazing thing. And that's sort of the most surprising thing is how teamwork and, you know, how collaboration actually works. I think there's, you know, we're in a new generation of collaborative works, and I think it's not necessarily about dumbing things down, which oftentimes you think that collaboration might be about that, the lowest common denominator. But in fact, the surprising thing, and the thing that I think has made these projects good, is that so many people, creative people, have been involved, and it's been about supporting each other's best attributes and best contributions. Anyway, so yeah. I don't know.
Well, one of the things that surprised me in a really pleasurable way is the new places all throughout the city to just sit and observe the city. So I've been a fan of Times Square really since I was a student, and always thought it was kind of an incredible place that encouraged, if you look at the history of neon signs and kind of the use of extravaganzas and diversity, But it's been fascinating to see the city respond to more places to sit and be a part of. You know, that's an intersection that's about movement. But being able to be there and observe it in a different way, I think the city is incredibly durable and continues to evolve in kind of great ways.
Yeah, and I think what we have to do as designers is not get hurty feelings when people don't like our things, and also be supple enough to change them or to let them change over time. You know, I know one thing that's happening already down at Lincoln Center, and it's something that we're embracing, is the restaurant in the ground floor of Tully, which was designed to be fairly slick and modern and supportive of the environment, is being changed with a new restaurateur. And it's a very different approach, and it's all about Americana, and which is, you know, okay, we don't do Stickley, we don't do, you know, that kind of, but you know what? They came to us and said, how would you do it? And we're like, okay, let's think about that. You know, so it's a really interesting challenge, and we're already, things grow and change, and they have to keep the city alive.
It's also, I think, interesting that the project we're working on together is a building that is in constant change. It's a building about movement and transformation.
Which is the culture shed that we saw at the end of
Right.
Charles's video.
Which we're not allowed to speak about, actually.
The project whose name shall not be mentioned, yes. It's very good. Well, I think I asked you both when I spoke to you at your offices as New Yorkers, the way that you engage with the city. You mentioned the places to sit around the city. What other sort of innovations over the last few years strike you as good design or bad design that you think are you know, kind of pushing the envelope?
Good design or bad design?
Things
well,
like
one example of great design, I think, is walking up and down the west side. The Hudson River rebirth is, I think, exceptional. And there's a lot of potential for more. There's a lot of available space, and I think the kind of public-private partnership that you see starting to weave in and out of the west side is exceptional. And I personally, just personal taste, miss the kind of chaos of neon and things that are actually crafted in Times Square. I'm a little overloaded with LED boards. And I think the, you know, the kind of immersiveness and the inventiveness of things that transformed and did things hopefully will make a resurgence.
Yeah, I mean, it's, first off, I think New York is a far more engaging architecturally now than it was before Bloomberg, and you know, there's been great projects put up everywhere. So I think the city is far more, it's really a place where architecture, recent architecture, has been able to sing, which is fantastic. But there are a couple things I would say. One is, yes, where's the honky tonk? Where's the, you know, where's the rough and tumble? I mean, maybe now we should start shipping. Never mind, I'm not even going to go there. But you know, there's a little bit of, it's become a little sterile, and what can you do? You know, how do you design that? How do you legislate that? That's one thing. And the other thing I would say is, you know, I think the city has gotten a lot better about shepherding projects, developers' projects, into good places in terms of design. But I see really bad stuff still going up, and it makes me shiver sometimes that you know, people have put things up just very quickly to make a fast buck. That's not city building, and city building needs to be measured and understood and kind of unfold over time. I'd rather have an empty lot than a bad building.
Well, I think it was really nice speaking with you two and speaking to this audience, and thank you very much to Municipal Art Society.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we